You wake up on your birthday, and the first thing you feel isn't excitement. It's something else. A heaviness. A strange quiet pressure in your chest. Maybe even irritation. You look at your phone lighting up with messages. You know people mean well. You know you're supposed to feel grateful, happy, celebratory. But instead, you feel off. And then the guilt creeps in. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just enjoy this? If you've ever felt that subtle emotional turbulence on your birthday, this video is for you. Because what you're experiencing isn't selfishness. It isn't ingratitude. And it definitely isn't you being too sensitive. It might actually be a sign of existential sensitivity and identity tension. And once you understand that, your birthday stops being a problem and starts becoming information. Let's talk about what's really happening. Birthdays are supposed to be simple. Cake, messages, maybe dinner. But psychologically, a birthday is not just a party. It's a mirror. It's a checkpoint. It's one of the few days where the world collectively says, look at yourself, evaluate your life. Even if no one says it out loud, your brain hears it. Another year older. Where are you now? Are you where you thought you'd be? Did you become who you said you would? For people who are emotionally intense or deeply reflective, that question doesn't feel casual. It feels seismic. This is what I call existential sensitivity. Some people experience time as a calendar. You experience it as meaning. You don't just turn 28. You feel 28. You measure it. You compare it to past versions of yourself. You imagine future versions. You scan for gaps between who you are and who you think you should be. That scanning process creates identity tension. Identity tension is the psychological strain that happens when your current self and your imagined self don't fully align, and birthdays amplify it. Think about it like this. Most days, you're running on autopilot. Work, responsibilities, small wins, small stresses. But on your birthday, autopilot switches off. You're suddenly hyper-aware. It's like someone turned the lights on in a messy room. Now you can see everything. That discomfort? It's not about balloons. It's about awareness. There's also a biological layer here. Our brains are wired to track time and progress. The prefrontal cortex, the part involved in planning and self-evaluation, becomes especially active when we think about milestones. At the same time, the default mode network, the system linked to self-reflection and autobiographical memory, lights up when we think about our life story. So on your birthday, your brain shifts into narrative mode. You start editing your autobiography. And if you're someone who already tends to overthink, analyze, or deeply process emotions, this internal audit can feel overwhelming. Add social expectation to that, and it becomes even more complicated. Birthdays are socially scripted joy. You're expected to be happy, celebrated, appreciative, visible. But what if visibility makes you uncomfortable? For many sensitive or introspective people, attention feels exposing. Being the center of a room can activate subtle threat signals in the nervous system. Your body doesn't interpret attention as pure celebration. It interprets it as scrutiny. Are they judging me? Do I deserve this? What if I don't feel as happy as I look? That internal conflict creates friction. You want to appreciate the love, but you also want to hide. That's identity tension again. There's also something quieter happening. Birthdays force you to confront time. And time, if we're honest, is scary. Each year is proof that life is moving, that chapters are closing, that certain versions of you are gone forever. If you are someone who feels deeply, you don't just celebrate growth. You grieve past selves. You miss who you were at 17, or 22, or even last year. You might feel nostalgia and pressure in the same breath. That emotional mix can feel confusing, but it's actually a sign of psychological depth. Now here's the important reframe. Feeling off on your birthday doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're conscious. The problem isn't that you're too sensitive. The problem is that you've never been taught how to metabolize these milestone emotions. So let's talk about how to do that. First, separate celebration from evaluation. They don't have to happen on the same day. If your brain wants to reflect on your life trajectory, give it a container. Schedule a separate reflection ritual. Set aside time a few days before or after your birthday to intentionally review your goals, values, and direction. When you give reflection its own space, your actual birthday doesn't have to carry the full weight of your existential analysis. Second, redefine what celebration means for you. Celebration doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be performative. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's Instagram story. Ask yourself, what kind of energy feels regulating to me? Maybe it's a quiet morning alone. Maybe it's one deep conversation instead of a big party. You're allowed to design your birthday around nervous system safety, not social pressure. Third, work with the identity tension instead of fighting it. When you notice that internal voice saying, "You're not where you should be," pause. Instead of arguing with it, get curious. What standard am I measuring myself against? Is that standard mine or inherited? Often, birthday discomfort is amplified by invisible timelines we absorbed from family, culture, or peers. By 25, you should have this. By 30, you should have that. But those timelines aren't laws of nature. They're social constructs. Your path might be non-linear because you're complex, multi-interested, still evolving. That's not failure, that's dimensionality. Try this reframe exercise. Write down the expectations you feel. Then ask which ones actually align with your values. You might discover that the tension isn't about age, it's about misalignment. Fourth, address the attention discomfort directly. If being the center of attention triggers you, prepare your nervous system in advance. Practice grounding techniques before social gatherings. Let close friends know what kind of celebration feels good to you. You don't have to explain everything. A simple, "I prefer something low-key," is enough. Boundaries reduce emotional backlash. Fifth, allow mixed emotions. You can feel grateful and sad, excited and nostalgic, proud and uncertain. Human emotions are not single-note songs, they're orchestras. When you try to force yourself to feel only happiness, you create internal resistance. When you allow complexity, the pressure softens. There are, of course, caveats. If your birthday consistently triggers intense depression, hopelessness, or severe anxiety, that may be connected to deeper patterns, unresolved trauma, major life dissatisfaction, or mood disorders. In those cases, working with a therapist can be incredibly supportive. Also, if you grew up in environments where birthdays were neglected, chaotic, or emotionally loaded, your body may associate them with stress. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Understanding the origin helps you respond with compassion instead of shame. Now I want to speak to the part of you that feels embarrassed about this. The part that says, "It's just a birthday. Why am I like this?" You are like this because you think deeply, because you track meaning, because you care about becoming someone intentional. That's not a flaw. That's psychological sophistication. But sophistication without self-compassion becomes self-criticism. So here's something to practice. On your next birthday, instead of asking, "Am I where I should be?" ask, "What have I survived that no one sees?" Imagine reframing it as a personal retreat day, a recalibration point, a moment to realign with your values rather than evaluate your worth. Alignment is quieter than achievement, but it's more sustainable. Your timeline may look different because your architecture is different. That's not being behind. That's being multidimensional in a world that prefers straight lines. As we close, I want you to remember this. Feeling off on your birthday doesn't mean you hate celebration. It means milestones activate your inner narrator. And if your inner narrator is intense, reflective, and sensitive, it's going to speak loudly on symbolic days. Your task isn't to silence it, it's to guide it. Give it structure, give it compassion, give it perspective. And maybe this year, when you wake up and feel that familiar heaviness, you won't panic. You'll recognize it. Oh, this is my mind processing time. You'll take a breath. You'll choose what kind of day feels regulating. You'll allow complexity. And you'll remember that growth isn't measured in how loudly you celebrate, but in how honestly you relate to yourself. If this resonated with you, keep exploring your internal patterns. Try one of the reflective exercises we talked about. Observe what shifts. Because the goal isn't to become someone who loves birthdays. The goal is to become someone who understands their own mind, and that's worth celebrating.